Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and let's get into today's video. This case takes place in Sasebo, Nagasaki, Japan, and because of where this took place, this case is also known as Sasebo slashing. Nawada-tan was born on 21st of November 1992, which makes her a Scorpio, and she was only 11 years old when this murder happened. And because she was so young at that time, her identity was kept hidden. Nawada went to school in Sasebo. Her childhood seemed pretty happy at school and at home. She was a really active kid. She was really into arts and sports, and she played for her school basketball team. Nawada was not only outgoing, but she was also really, really smart and intelligent. She had an IQ of 140. Even though she was classed as a genius, her school grades did begin to drop, and her mom thought that her grades were dropping because she was spending a lot of her time playing basketball, which resulted in her mom telling her that she had to quit the basketball team and that she was no longer allowed to play basketball because she needed to get her grades up. So she did drop out of the team, and this really changed Nevada. She went from being this outgoing and active girl to always being shut in her room, which means that she was spending a lot of her time by herself in her room, because of which she struggled a lot with her studies. Now, with her being in her room all the time, she developed some other hobbies. She started to watch a lot of animes and also started watching a lot of horror movies, and she would spend hours watching horror movie after horror movie, and this is how she would spend most of her time. And while watching these horror films, there was one film that really stuck with Nawada, and this film is called Battle Royale. So this film is about a group of students who are taken to a remote island and given weapons, and they have to fight each other to death. It is the film that is said to have inspired Hunger Games as well. Because this film was so gory, Nawada became obsessed with gore, that she created her own website where she would share articles about horror and gore, and she would also share horror and gore animations. And mind you, she's just 11 years old. On her website, she had her profile information. This blog became quite successful, and her classmates knew about it, and they would sometimes comment on it. And there were some people who would leave really mean comments on her website, and it is reported that she would be bullied in those comments, and they would become really toxic. These kind of comments did lead to the tragic events of this case. One classmate of Nevada would comment on her videos quite often, and it was her very close friend, Satomi. They both were really, really close friends. They were in the same class, they played basketball together, and they were also on the same team and would message each other online. One day, they must have had some kind of falling out because Satomi didn't leave the nicest comment on Nevada's blog. She insulted her weight, calling her fat, and called her a goody goody, and this really hurt Nevada's feelings. And Nevada wanted an apology from Satomi, but Satomi ignored her and refused to apologize, and instead called Nevada pretentious. And following this, Nevada became enraged with Satomi, and she became a sworn enemy of Nevada. And this is when Nevada started to become very, very angry. And she would take this anger out, not just at school, but at home as well. She would sometimes kick and push the boys from her school into the walls in the playground. And it was around this time that Nevada was allowed to play basketball again because her mother allowed her to. But as soon as she started playing basketball again, she quit on her own, and she has said that I don't like playing with my friends. Because she quit basketball, she didn't have anything else to do, so she was spending so much time in her room, watching movies and immersing herself in her blog. She found another obsession, which was a TV show called Monday Mystery Theater. It was another pretty gruesome fictional TV show, which aired on TV every Monday. This show was about trying to solve a fictional murder, but it would be pretty gruesome. In the TV show, there were a lot of depictions of people being killed with a box cutter, which later comes into play. It wasn't long after that Nevada threatened a boy at her school with a box cutter, and she actually had a box cutter with her. And this incident was just dismissed by her teachers. And less than a week after this incident, Nevada got another quite mean comment from Satomi on her blog. Satomi again insulted Nevada on her weight. So now it's 1st June 2004, and Nevada and Satomi are going to school just like every other day, and this was the day of their annual school photo. And it was at lunchtime on this day that Nawada went to Satomi and told her that she needed to show Satomi something in an empty classroom, and she led Satomi into an empty classroom. Satomi went with her willingly. Nawada sat Satomi into a chair and told her to cover her eyes, and Satomi refused to do so. So she covered her eyes for her with her own hands. And then Nawada took out a box cutter and she slashed Satomi's throat. Nawada also slashed Satomi's wrists, and very tragically, these wounds were fatal. Nawada then left the classroom and went out. She very airily made her way throughout the corridors of the school, covered in Satomi's blood. So after lunchtime was over, Nawada and Satomi both were due back into their classrooms, and they were nowhere to be found. It was at this moment that Nawada appeared at the doorway of the class. The teacher and the class saw Nawada covered in blood, just standing there. The teacher thought that Nawada had hurt herself and the blood was hers. But Nawada just stood there and says, "This is not my blood." After hearing this, the teacher asked Nawada, "Where is Satomi?" But she didn't say anything, so the teacher went to do her own search to find Satomi, and she did find Satomi in that classroom. The police were called immediately. When the police arrived, they arrested Nawada. It is said that when Nawada was taken in for her crimes, she kept saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Nawada did admit that she carried out the murder, and apart from that, she didn't really say much else. She was also refusing drinks and food that was being offered to her at the police station, and she spent the whole night in the police station. Eventually, she did accept some bread and juice, and after she had eaten, she did start to open up about what had happened. Nevada initially told the police about the comments that Satomi had left on her blog, insulting her, and also told them when these comments started, and the most recent one was only 4 days prior to the day of murder. And that is when she started to plan the murder, which means that it was a premeditated murder. She also told them about the Monday Mystery Theater show that she would watch and how a lot of people in it were killed using a box cutter, and that is what inspired her. The police had to tell Satomi's father exactly what happened to her. Satomi was just 12 at the time of her death. She was youngest of 3 siblings. She had 2 older brothers. Satomi's mother had died almost 3 years prior to Satomi's death from cancer. Satomi's father described her as being like air to him. She was everything to him. And one of the things that he could not wrap his head around was how could Nevada do this to one of her very close friends. A few months after the murder, the case was heard in a family court, and normally everything would be done to avoid sending a child to an institution, but because of the severity of this case, the court decided to send Nevada to a reformal institution for 2 years, and while she was there, she was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Because of this, her sentence was increased by another 2 years. After this case, a lot of theories came out and a lot of emphasis was put on how she liked horror films and gore, and in particular, a lot of emphasis was put on Battle Royale movie and the TV show. And that Nevada being exposed to these extreme shows and movies at such a young age led to her murdering Satomi. I think with cases involving children, people like to blame anything. They like to blame horror films, video games, the internet. Maybe in some cases it can contribute to the murder, but I don't believe that they are the sole reason for a child committing a murder. So when this case blew up online, the girl was given the nickname Nevada Dawn. And the nickname came from the hoodie that she was wearing on the day of murder, which said Nevada on it. And Tan is added to names in Japan to kind of make them a little bit more cutesy. And Nevada Tan was also turned into a meme because she was so cute, and it's not the first time we see this happening. Because of the online popularity of Nevada Tan, a lot of people started dressing up as her, because of which a lot of shirts of Nevada University were being sold, and the demand for the shirts got so out of hand that the university had to pull it out of respect of this case. A German rock band renamed their band Nevada Tan in honor of Nevada Tan. This case brought up a lot of debate in Japan because there was a mass panic about this case because it was an 11-year-old, And people wanted to know what happened so they could learn from this case so it wouldn't happen again. In 2005, Satomi and Nevada both were given graduation certificates. Satomi's father accepted her certificate on her behalf. On May 29, 2008, authorities said that they wouldn't be seeking any more cases for Nevada and she would just be placed under house arrest. And in 2013, when she was just 20 years old, she was released from house arrest. Her and her family had moved to an unknown location. And that's the video. That was the case of Nevada Tan. If you guys liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!